So I'm finally doing a Sailor Moon video. Well, that's not quite true. I did do those if the Sailor Scouts had Devil Fruit videos partway through last year, but this one is going to be um, a video in regards to the 30th anniversary of Sailor Moon when it first, when the manga first came out in Japan, way back in 1992, which it's like, I feel old because I'm going to be 30 this April, or this might be coming out in April, so April this month, I'm going to be 30, but then it's just like, but I'm the same age as Sailor Moon, so, as the manga, as the series, I'm just like, okay, I'm a little bit better. I'm a little bit more okay with that. So that made me feel a little bit better. So the whole premise for, Sailor Moon, the magical girl concept, I don't think that Sailor Moon was the first series that did that. I'm not going to wave this thing around the entire time. But I don't believe Sailor Moon was the first series that did, like, the magical girl concept or whatever. And even if it wasn't, it was definitely one of the ones that made it a little bit more popular and everything. Because, of course, from that, we, of course, got, card captors as represented in the back here. And, lots of other ones down the line that were these, girls with these, amazing magical powers. And then, they have to keep, their real life and their superhero life, like, separate and everything like that, which is, of course, a playoff, of course, on, American comics, where it's just like, oh, Superman has to keep the fact that he's, Clark Kent a secret, and, same thing with, like, Batman and Bruce Wayne and everything like that. So, it's like teenage girls is also the other thing that kind of goes on with, Sailor Moon, is that the majority of the main cast are, 5 teenage girls. Throw in a couple of, a little bit older ones and, some other things. But they're, the main part of the cast that we spend the most amount of time with are, teenage girls. And, a couple of weeks ago, my dad sent me a text that said, hey, they're talking about Sailor Moon on NPR because of the 30th anniversary. And I mean, I'm like, okay, so I looked up that. It was just like it was like a 7-8 minute piece on like NPR that was like about the anniversary of Sailor Moon. And like they talked to, some people that like deal a lot more, with like understanding of fiction and everything like that than I do and everything. But, these are still people, the people that they talk to, the lady that they mainly talk to, like, she grew up under, like, the very similar circumstances that I did, in the fact that this was a girl who watched, like, the original English dub of the series that was, edited here and there, a few things taken out, a few things changed around a little bit, particularly when it came to Uranus and Neptune, and a few other bits here and there that they adjusted out. To make it a little bit more, PG acceptable for, America in, the 1990, late 1990s, early 2000s. And, it's like, so they talked about that and they talked about like so many other things. And I just kind of wanted to go over some of the things that they mentioned and kind of just also how those like applied to me as well. Although at the top of the video, some minutes in, I was going to point out the fact that, or I am going to point out the fact that, so this is obviously, Sailor Moon's wand, her second wand that she uses throughout the series. She uses this in season 2, and then it gets replaced in season 3. So it's going to go over here. Stay. The long middle one is the third season box set that cost me like $80-90 some at like our state fair like a long time ago. And like I had saved up a bunch of money to go and spend at the state fair for like, we have like this exhibition center and like there would be lots of stuff inside the exhibition center. And like I had this choice between this and like a deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that were like Merrick's deck from Yu-Gi-Oh. And I went with that, and I'm going with that was the better investment in my opinion. But then I've also got like these other two that are 2 of the movies that they had. This is from, all 3 of these are from the original, the English dub, the original English dub. And I know that like over the last several years they've been re-releasing the original series with the newer voice cast. that they have for Crystal, going in and like, you know, doing those characters and redubbing it and getting it much closer to like what the original Japanese was for the actual series. And I don't think that they edit out any of the parts with like Uranus and Neptune. One of the things that I, you know, it's like when I got older with Sailor Moon, it's just like I found out that like, you know, Serena wasn't necessarily her like quote unquote actual name. Her actual name was like Usagi, and of course that's where the, you know, Anamanda Tsuki no Usagi, of course, you know, comes from. But you know, it's just like all the characters, it's, you know, it's like Ray was the same and Amy was like the same, but like, you know, Mina was like Minako, and like Lita was like Makoto or something along those lines. And you know, it's just like, you know, they changed the names a little bit to make them a little bit more English, which like they did with like Yu-Gi-Oh as well, of course, because, you know, Joey Wheeler is not a traditional Japanese name. So it's like you know, it's like when I got older, it's just like, okay, I can understand that a little bit, but like, you know, when it comes to Sailor Moon these days, it's just like you're okay if you kind of refer to them as like either character or as either name, it's okay. So, you know, I go back and forth between like, you know, their Sailor Scout name and their like Japanese name and their English name sometimes. Although, you know, just like, yeah, we're gonna shift those around a little bit. But one of the things is, you know, throughout the course of the series, we see these lots of different representations of, you know, the way that friendship works, and, you know, with Sailor Moon. And like, yes, it is one of those series that goes into like, you know, your love for others, the power of your friendship. Parts of that are, you know, part of where your power comes from, but it's also, you know, your own inner power is also where a lot of that comes from as well. But like, you know, we see Serena's friendship with like, she has her original friend, she has, and I'm just gonna go with their their names that I'm more familiar with is, you know, Molly, who is one of her original friends, who like does not have powers, and literally the first monster that Serena has to fight, of course, is Molly's mother, who's actually not actually Molly's mother. She's like a weird doppelganger clone type thing that she has to then fight. Just like, I just had to destroy my friend's mom. She's not actually your friend's mom. Oh, thank God. Those moments. You know, but like, you know, Molly is like Serena's friend all the way through the series. She never finds out about Serena being a Sailor Scout, as far as I'm aware, although that would have been interesting if she did. And then of course we have, you know, the different Sailor Scouts that come into way. We have, you know, Amy, who is of course this very smart one, and like she was never ashamed of being smart. She never really seemed like she was ashamed of being smart. And like, yeah, the other girls would like tease her a little bit every now and then, but it wasn't like mean teasing about her being smart and everything. And they like, you know, they were perfectly fine with her being smart. And, you know, I think Amy did end up becoming a doctor. Or if she didn't, she should have. But, you know, and then we have Ray, who's, of course, you know, her and Serena always butting heads all the time. You know, that was always just like one of those things where it's just like, yeah, you argue with your best friends, but, you know, in a pinch, you'll stand up for your best friend in front of anybody type of thing. And then, of course, you have Lita, who is, of course, this transfer student who's like has this huge bad reputation behind her and everything. And literally, Serena becomes friends with her because she can cook really good food. She also saves Serena the first time that they meet each other, of course, but then she's like, oh, you have food. That was just always one of those things I found hilarious. But like, you know, and then like when Mina showed up and Venus showed up, you know, it was like under like quote unquote false pretenses, and the fact that she was pretending to be the Moon Princess, and, you know, to like give them at least something to rally behind to a degree. But, you know, in the end, of course, you know, it's all of them end up being friends. And then of course you have the talking cats with Luna and Artemis, you know, and then of course you have Tuxedo Mask. It didn't stick in the ground. But, like, you know, we see a lot of that when it comes to, you know, like, when Tuxedo Mask comes in, it's like, literally the first interaction he has with Sailor Moon is him telling her, you can't cry, Sailor Moon, crying won't solve your problem. And then literally, you know, this is when she's fighting the first buster, and she starts crying, and they go over this in the NPR thing, and that's why I'm bringing it up here. Literally, she starts crying because she's so scared, and rightfully so. Her day has gone from normal day to weird talking cat showing up in her room, giving her a brooch and saying, put this on and say this. And then she gets powers, and then she has to go and fight her best friend's mom, who's like drained all this energy from all these women in their jewelry store. I've always like, what is this premise? And I love it. And like she starts crying, and like her buns, the things on her buns act like amplifiers. And I wish that they had implemented this more throughout the series. I don't remember how often they actually use it throughout the series, but like I wish they implemented it more, where just like, you know, Serena starts crying, and like it like amplifies like her cries to like, you know, sound out throughout the room, and like it causes, you know, pain to the monster. And like, just like, well, see there, Tuxedo Mask. See, crying did solve part of her problem. And then she's able to like attack the villain and destroy the villain. You know, destroy the weird monster and everything. And like save her friend and everything. And then Tuxedo Mask just goes away. And it's like, well, my job's done here, but you didn't do anything type moments. And, you know, throughout the course of the series, of course, we see all these other different versions of friendship that come into play. Like, we have Rini and Hotaru, of course, and, you know, we bring in, you know, Amara and Michelle, you know, Uranus and Neptune and everything. And, like, you know, there's the whole thing in the original English dub where they're cousins. And then, you know, later on when I got older, I'm like, like, I see stuff and I'm just like, okay, well, they weren't supposed to be cousins. They were originally supposed to be lovers, but they didn't want to do that in English dub, in the original English dub. And I don't know where I stand on this now, but I just like, okay, whatever. You know, I do remember when I clicked in my head of just like, well, they don't seem like cousins. But yeah, whatever. But of course, you know, we have that. And then, of course, later on, we have, you know, the anime did a very good job of this where, yeah, the anime would, like, elaborate a lot more on, like, what was in the manga, because the original manga was just, like, 12 volumes. And, you know, they elaborate a lot more on stuff in the anime. And, like, I do believe that the creator of Sailor Moon was a very big influence on, like, the anime itself. Like, she was part of helping them figure this stuff out. And because, like, she, you know, part of what she wanted to do, she couldn't quite do in the manga, so she then, like, did that in the anime. And, like, she uses that and everything. Kind of like how sometimes, like, different creators, Oda does this very, very rarely with One Piece, but he will do it occasionally with One Piece, where, like, something in the anime, like maybe something, he didn't pull something off quite the way he wanted to in the manga, and then, like, when the anime gets to that part, he'll be like, okay, so this is what I did in the manga, and it was very close to what I wanted, but, like, I just want you to adjust this part here a little bit, and then extend this a little bit, and then, like, you know, that'll work. For like, just setting something up a little bit better for down the road, or, like, yes, this is what this would look like, or yes, this is what this would look like. So there's, like, a little bit more of that. And, like, you know, I think she had, like, a fair amount of say in what was going on with the anime. And, you know, in the second season of the anime, when they're dealing with, like, you know, the Nemesis and the Dark Moon, whatever, you know, the evil moon family, that are named all after different types of gems, because one of the running themes in Sailor Moon, which I did not understand as a child, but I understand much better now, is that lots of the different characters, lots of the different villains are named after gems. You know, Jadeite, you know, Jade, Nephlite, Malachite. You know, Malachite is, you know, a gemstone, and, you know, lots of other stuff. It's, you know, it's just like rubies and diamonds and, you know, sapphire and, you know, emerald and everything. You know, it's like they were all named after different types of gems. Not every single one of them, but a majority of them are all named after different types of gems. Which, you know, now that I'm older, I'm just like, okay, that's clever. And one of the things is, like, they have the four sisters that are, like, these they're originally, members of this family, and they cause the scouts a lot of problems, but in the end, the scouts give them the ability to be able to become human. And then they actually get to have like a life of their own where they're free and they're happy with each other. And like, yeah, they still argue and everything, but like they're much, much happier. And I wish they had elaborated a little bit more on them throughout the course of like the rest of the series, but like in the manga they just get destroyed. In the manga they're just destroyed because most of the villains in the manga get destroyed. In the anime, sometimes the villains will get kind of a redemption a little bit at times, or a little bit more of a redemption than they get in the manga. But we see a lot of that, and going into that we have like all these different references of like different forms of romance. And it's like the main overarching one, of course, throughout the entire series is, of course, Serena and Darien, Usagi and Mamoru. Princess Serenity and Prince Endymion, Tuxedo Mask and Sailor Moon. This whole thing of, and of course, it's them originally just kind of like in love with each other. Serena's kind of falling in love with Tuxedo Mask, and there's this, attraction and this draw of each other. And then, of course, partway through like the first arc, it's just like, oh no, he's this. And in the anime, I love how in the original anime, how they just literally are just like, no, he just like picks on her, and like in real life, like they just don't get along, and then like they end up having to like get past that, and I love that, and it's hilarious. And we go through all of that. Like their relationship throughout the entire series goes through so many ups and downs. It's like he breaks up with her at one point because he's trying to protect her, and then there's like all this other stuff, and then like yes, they are together, and like yeah, they have a daughter in the future, and of course they end up together, and like all this other stuff. And it's one of the lines, of course, it's Usagi has, and I think this is more in the manga and probably in like the Crystal version of the anime of like you are my first love, my only love. Even if we're reborn in another life, we'll find each other, and then we'll fall in love again. And that was just one of those things that, like, when I got older, that kind of became my opinion of, like, what soulmates are. And kind of now that is kind of my opinion of what soulmates are. It's just, like, even if we find each other in this life and we, like, maybe don't get to be together the way that we're supposed to be in this life, one of us dies or we both die, because there's multiple times throughout the series where both of them have died, and then they get reborn, of course, but it's within their same lifetime. So, but, all this other stuff that happens, and, they still keep finding each other. And I've always loved that, because we see them in these like different stages, because like way back in in the past, in the Silver Millennium, they're the prince and the princess that are not supposed to be together. Earth and the moon are not supposed to get along, and yet those two fall in love, and that gives a reason for a war and everything. But then there's when there's Serena and Darien, there's like in the original anime, they like T like picks on her and everything like that. And then, like, their relationship gets so much better from there, and I do like that. And, like, they show that a bit more in the manga and in Crystal and everything. And then, they are actually finally together, but then they go through all this other stuff, and, like, they're drawn together more as, like, Tuxedo Mask and Sailor Moon first, and then it does draw into them actually as, Usagi and Mamoru being together. And one of the things I always found confusing, or that I find confusing more later on after I've like actually read through all of the manga, I was just like, why do her parents let her stay at his house? Because like Serena in the series is like, I think she's supposed to be like 14 or 15 at the start of the series. And then like by then, like, yeah, like time passes in the series to a degree, but she's like me, but like yet she goes and she like spends the night at his house. I know it's Japan, I know it's a slightly different culture than like what I'm used to here, but I just find that very odd. But like, and of course I do love in the anime, there is like an episode in the anime, I don't remember if this is in the manga or in Crystal, but at one point in the anime, like Serena and Derry go back to Serena's house, and like her parents are there and her little brother, and like they're like showing up to like see them, and like the dad freaks out because like, oh my god, my little girl has a boyfriend. It's like you should be more worried about the fact that your little girl fights evil by moonlight. It's just like that should be the thing that worries you a bit more than the fact that, oh, she has a boyfriend. But I just always found that hilarious, and he just like freaks out. And I don't remember if we ever get like him actually seeing, Darian again or whatever. I'm assuming they do see each other because like Darian's at the house every now and then. But I just found that funny, and I don't remember if I think like Serena's mom's okay with it, but like she still Serena's mom still gives off her human mother, because Queen Serenity was perfectly fine with Darian and everything, but like Serena's human mother, who I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, she seemed okay with Darian, but she still strikes me as a type of mom of like, oh yes, you're perfectly fine to be around my daughter, but if I find out that you broke her heart, I will find a way to cut you up into thousands of little pieces, and then I'll bake you into a pie. It's like, we never get that impression from her, but that's just what I always thought of, just like, okay, because like I always just kind of picture this thing as like, maybe Queen Serenity didn't have like 100% control over like where each of them would get reincarnated in this new life in like modern day, but I always thought that it was like maybe she found like she was like at least finding someone, like she found places where like they would at least be like happy and safe as much as she could, and like she put Serena in this place, like Usagi, with this mother and father, because like maybe there was something very similar about like Usagi's, human mother to, Serenity. Because like Serenity like died to protect her daughter and to protect her kingdom. And, ghost hallucination thing as well, Jedi mind trick thing, but Jedi ghost. Oh god, Queen Serenity's a Jedi. Actually, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Force ghost. But it's just like we see Serena, Serena's mother is like very protective of Serena, but she's also okay with her, doing what she wants to do to a degree. And I think Queen Serenity like tried to find something where like Serena would be okay. And like she found these two and she's like, she'll be good with these two. And I think that's just kind of what I thought. That's, just like this thing that like, I like eventually like logic dictates that like Serena's human parents have to find out what happens eventually. But it still takes a while. And it's like post-series. But, other things, it's like one of the things that they show in the series, of course, is that the girls don't always have to be the ones that need saving. Because, like, there's multiple times where Serena goes and saves Darian. The entire first movie is literally Darian gets kidnapped by his old friend that clearly has a crush on him, and Serena and the others go to the weird asteroid covered in flowers and fight their way to him, and then to go and protect Darian, and then it's still she's the one that ends up protecting him. I mean, yes, in the end he still has to kiss her to give her like the life energy and everything, but she's the one that went and like she's the one that protected all of them and Earth and everything with her life, so she doesn't always need to be saved. And like throughout the course of the series there's these other moments where like Darian is literally kind of the damsel in distress at times, and I find that hilarious. Where Tuxedo Mask is literally the damsel in distress, because like throughout the course of the series, the rest is Serena gets like several power-ups. Of course, like every season she gets a new power-up, either with a new brooch and a new wand, or like an additional power-up on top of that, with like, the different chalices and everything. But, Darian never really gets a power-up, and I kind of wish they had given him a little bit more of a power-up at some point. I wish that was like the one thing I was just like, can we just give Darian a little bit more of a power-up? Can he get like some like armor on him a little bit? Can he get like something that allows him to get a little bit stronger? Yeah, he like can turn into the prince form at various points in time, but it's not quite the same. But it's just like, yeah, it's not always Serena that has to be saved. Like, she has to go and save Darian, or multiple times, like, the scouts have to save, one of the guys that they, like or something like that. I just always found that funny. Also, there's, in regards to the romance, there's also the whole theory that, like, each of the, Serena and Darian were together, obviously, in the Silver Millennium. And then it's heavily implied that Venus and Malachite or Kurzite, whichever one you want to go to, the one with the white hair, that like they were together as well. But then that like implies that like, because there's also this like a drawing of like all the Sailor Scouts like with each of the different generals in their princess forms or like in their Sailor Scout forms, and they look very happy. So there's just like, you know, were they each in pairs at some point? Like, you know, his generals fell in love with her scouts type of a thing, and I would have been okay with that if they pulled that off in the series. But like, you know, so we have that. And, you know, we have Luna and Artemis, of course. And then, of course, there's Rini and Diana that get brought into this. You know, and like this concept of like what family looks like. Because, like, you know, Amy's parents are divorced. And I believe canonically, at least in the original English dub, they're divorced. And her father's this painter that goes around and he paints and he sends her and her mother paintings that he's done and everything. And, you know, Ray's parents are implied that, like, her mother is dead because she's, like, raised by her grandfather at the shrine, but, like, her father's off, like, this politician or whatever. And then, like, Mina's parents are, like, happily married and everything. And then, like, it's implied that, like, Lita's parents are dead, you know, and she's, like, been taking care of herself for a long time. And, like, Darian's parents are, like, definitely canonically dead because, like, they died in a car crash when he was a child. And he was the only one that survived. And, you know, Serena's parents are, of course, they're still together and perfectly happy and everything. And, like, I liked occasionally where, like, they threw in something where it's just like, you know, oh, it's our anniversary. Oh, yeah, it is. Moments of that. Of course, Serena and her brother. You know, it's like they have all of that stuff that they do. And, like, you know, one of the things that, like, throughout the course of, I think it's the 4th arc, you know, into the, 4th arc / 5th anime arc, where, like, we see, you know, Uranus and Neptune, like, at the end of, you know, season 3, you know, they left Hotaru with her father, who's now, you know, he's, you know, been cleansed and everything. Hotaru's been turned into a baby and everything. And, like, they leave them. And then, like, at some point, you know, Pluto shows up with baby Hotaru. And then, like, they basically have to raise baby Hotaru. And, like, she grows very rapidly. But, like, you know, she calls Haruka Uranus, she calls her, you know, Papa to a degree, and she calls Michiru, you know, Neptune, she calls her, you know, Mama to a degree, and I just found that adorable. Like that's in more of the, you know, that's more in the manga and Crystal. But like, you know, they make this family for her, so she at least has a family. Admittedly, as far as I'm aware, her father is still perfectly alive, but I don't know. Maybe he's still around. I don't know. But, like, you know, so we have that and everything. But I just always found that so, you know, they show these different representations of what family is like and everything. And, of course, we saw these different bonds between, like, Serena and Rini whenever Rini shows up. And, like, when they're, you know, when they're both, like, Rini's, like, you know, still in her adolescence, of course. And, you know, they don't always get along. They butt heads so much because they're so similar. And then Rini goes and falls in love with a horse. Hey, you know, whatever. But, like, there were so many things that they went over in the series that I just, like, I loved watching that when I was growing up. One of the other things was, like, sometimes that making the right decision is very hard. And they showed this multiple times. And I think one of the best examples was at the end of the first season when all, you know, it's like Serena is like the last scout left, and like the rest of the Sailor Scouts, you know, Mercury and Venus and Mars and Jupiter have all been, you know, destroyed by Beryl's forces, kind of like sacrificing themselves in order to give Serena the chance to go further. And Serena, you know, she has to keep going. She has to go. And she's, you know, she has to make her way to where, you know, Queen Beryl is, and she has to, you know, fight against Queen Beryl, and she has to, you know, free Darian in that context. And, you know, and she does, and then she still has to go and she has to fight Beryl to, you know, save everybody else. And, you know, she still dies in the process, but she's not alone because, like, the spirits of her friends are still there with her and everything, and she still defeats Beryl. And then the other one, way at the end of the final series, at the end of the series, literally she has watched all of her friends die. when in like the last series, in the last season, in the last arc of the manga, where it's like one by one she watches her friends get their star seeds, their, you know, like the core of like something that makes them alive taken from them. And like she watches them die in front of her again and again and again, sometimes protecting her, sometimes like in a weird convoluted plan in order to try to defeat the bad guy, in regards to how Uranus and Neptune died. And like she watches Darien die, and like just she watches them all die in front of her, and yet she still, you know, and she, you know, then she has to, you know, fight against Galaxia, who's gone way uber chaotic crazy at this point in time because she's possessed by chaos. And, you know, she fights her and she does defeat her, but it's not through force. It's not through like just like, you know, stabbing her with this sword. It's actually like she defeats her kind of through forgiveness and like reaching through and like finding the good that's still in there, and then like giving the good the ability to fight against the darkness. And like, you know, Serena is still left literally alone at the end of that. Everyone else is dead as far as she's aware. And yet she still made those choices to, you know, to forgive Galaxia, to give Galaxia a second chance. And yes, the rest of the scouts and Darien come back and they're perfectly fine. And then somehow we cut to a wedding after that. You know, Serena and Darien's wedding after that. But it's still like, it's this, you know, big, beautiful thing that they draw out and everything. And I just, you know, I just always loved how they showed that in the series, that not every decision is going to be easy. The right decision is not always the easy one. Sometimes you have to give someone a second chance, even if they've hurt you. Depends on how they hurt you and like what else has happened to them and everything, but still, you know, I love that. And I just wanted to throw in one more thing here at the end of it. I've made lots of different like clay creations. Like there's this Crayola model magic clay that I love working with. I haven't used it in a long time, but one of the things that I did was, at one point, I ended up literally going through and making a ton of the different brooches and weapons from like Sailor Moon, like the rods and everything that she has in the series. And I made them out of clay, and I tried to make them about as close to life size as possible. And like some of them are like this long. I have a couple that are like this long. And, you know, I wanted to pull them out, but they're kind of like wrapped up in like this trunk in my room. And I'm just like, I do not have time to pull those out and like then put them back in there and everything. But like I tried to get them as close to what they would look like as possible. And so I did a bunch of that stuff, and like I have them, and I made the crystals, all this stuff. So, you know, I loved them. I loved the series. I still love the series. You know, some point I will get around to doing those Sailor Moon, you know, character, you know, discussion videos at some point in time, but I'm trying to get through, you know, Pixar at this point in time, and there's been so much with like One Piece and My Hero at the moment that I just haven't had the chance to work on Sailor Moon stuff for a while, but I will eventually get to those. So that's what I have for this video. 30 years of Sailor Moon, you know, what Sailor Moon means to me, what it has meant to me for all that time frame, you know, I loved it. And the reason that I'm finally doing this now is because of the 30th anniversary, of course, but Turning Red, Pixar movie, has lots of, you know, anime references and like, you know, things in it, and like there's influences there from Sailor Moon to a degree, and from lots of other anime as well. But, you know, that, you know, the core group of friends, a lot of anime have like that core group of friends, of course, but like just like that concept, and I've always loved that. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and comment below in regards to some of your favorite, you know, Sailor Moon memories. You know, I've watched enough of the original English dub of like several of the movies to the point where I can do the words along with the movie. Just like, I know these words. Okay, bye. Yes, I'm a dork. Bye. The people of the world, all of them, tend to think only about what we cannot share. But our brains are all the same. We are the same people.